Sean, would the 99 Spurs have beaten the 98 Bulls?
Well, first off, Hector, let me say this. I'm the biggest Michael Jordan fan that there ever is, okay? I contend all the time, and I've said it numerous times, that had Michael not retired, they would have won 8 in a row. That's my feeling about it. But he retired and tried to play baseball. He won 6. And then, coming back and trying to win 4 in a row, I'm not sure. It's a lot harder. It gets harder and harder every year to try to come back and win. And when you look at the matchup, we always played the Bulls well. We always played them well, especially in the early 90s. I want to say that we had a better record against them than they had against us. I want to say that. I might have to look that up. But when you look at the matchups, yeah, they had MJ and they had Scotty. Obviously a tough matchup. We had good perimeter defenders. We can make them work hard for their points. But they had no answer for Big Dave and Tim Duncan. I mean, they just didn't. There was no one that could guard Timmy in the league. Ditto for David Robinson. And so I just feel like, the way the game was played back then, it would have been very interesting because we would have pounded them inside.
I've heard longtime Houston beat writer Fran Blindberry say that during the 92-93 season, Jordan told him, boy, it's a good thing we don't have to face the Rockets in the finals because we have no answer for Akeem. And I don't know if we could beat Akeem. Okay. Robert Ory has said in a separate interview, Phil Jackson didn't like to double. That was just his defensive philosophy is no one guy can beat us. So you take those two things. Any matchup I would think, and you would know better than I would, that Dream would have posed for MJ and the Bulls, Tim Duncan would have posed, and maybe even more. You now throw in another big, and then you look at the Bulls series, their history of runs. The teams that gave them the most fits in the East were teams that had good big men. The Pacers with Rick Smits, the Knicks with Patrick Ewing.
Yeah.
So you guys were built in a way that would have given them trouble. So when people say it's MJ, they would have won again. Who's going to stop him? Yeah, they have no answer for Tim and Dave, but who's going to stop him? I say, well, look at the other, because no one ever stopped Mike. That's
right.
That he's going to do his thing. The key is what were they able to do to you defensively, and I don't see any way they could have handled Tim or Dave.
No, they couldn't have stopped those guys, and at some point you would have had to have doubled Timmy Duncan at that time because the Knicks didn't, and you see what happened to them. He torched them, and so it's a shame that matchup never took place. It would have been a lot of fun. But like I said, Hector, and you hit on it. If they couldn't stop Akeem and they had trouble stopping Akeem, how are they going to stop Timmy Duncan when he got it going and David Robinson? And I'll even go back further. I had guys on those Bulls. I had friends on those Bulls teams. Steve Kerr, Judd Bushler. I was roommates with B.J. Armstrong. We were a college all-star team together. And in the early 90s, the Bulls came to town, and we had a great game with them. We beat them. And after the game, I took B.J. out to eat, and he told me, he said, hey, if you guys play like that, there's no one's going to beat you. He's like, you guys just had all kinds of answers for us. And so he was impressed with our Spurs team. He thought that we were the best team that they had played all year. Unfortunately, we were never able to get over the hump in the Western Conference and get to the finals to play them. So that would have been a lot of fun. So I think back at those early years, and then I add Tim Duncan into that mix and the way he played, it would have been a fun series.
Can you take us through what, and if a Cliff Notes version, if possible, because I know there would have been days and hours that would have gone into this preparation, but what would a Pop game plan have looked like against those 98 Bulls, given the 99 Spurs personnel?
It's hard to figure. I'm sure we would have, tried to control other people. We would have had a game plan for Michael. But, I don't think Pop, he didn't really like to double that much either. And, I was sure that we'd be pushing Jordan toward the baseline, not allowing him middle. trying to funnel him toward Tim and Dave, and trying to show him a lot of size. So we would just try to make him work hard for his points. But like you said, no one ever really stopped Michael. But we would just do our best to try to control the rest of the guys on the team. And I just feel like when you looked at our personnel, we had me and Mario that you could throw at MJ, and then we could rotate one of the other player off on Pippen and just make it tough for those guys to score. And if we were able to do that, because we were a terrific defensive ball club, when you had those two shot blockers back there and two guys that knew how to defend, they knew how to play great position defense, we would have made it difficult on them. And, our total mindset, because we were just a different Spurs team in '99 than all the other Spurs teams that had come before. We were a lot tougher mentally. We were all on the same page, and we were a better team. We were a group of guys who cared about the guy to our right and left, as opposed to other Spurs teams where maybe people had a different agenda. And so, it would have been really interesting. It would have been a lot of fun.
And I think specific to that 99 team too is, in terms of what Michael had never faced before, no team in the West during Jordan's runs swept the semifinals and swept the conference finals. And oh, by the way, in the semifinals, you guys swept Kobe and Shaq. And I think that's one of the things that's underrated about the 99 Spurs is the way you guys manhandled those Lakers. Because from there, the Lakers went on to win 3 straight. Yes, they added Phil Jackson, but they already had Kobe and Shaq in place. Do you mean to tell me that Phil Jackson is the difference between them being swept and them winning 3 straight? There's not that much of a difference. In other words, Kobe, Shaq, and that supporting cast, that core was already in place. And for you guys to not only beat them, but sweep that team, I think said volumes about the 99 team. You win 12 playoff games in a row. Again, more factors that the 98 Bulls never faced a Western Conference team like the ones you guys had. So it's not just matchups. To me, it's also, this was a different animal that the Bulls were playing. And I think because of that, I think the advantage goes to the 99 Spurs.
It was a different animal. And let's not forget that Glenn Rice was on that Laker team too. So that Laker team was also loaded. And then that Blazer team was loaded. They had all kinds of talent on that team. There are too many guys to name, and to sweep both those teams is something that I don't think a Bulls club could have done. I don't think they could have swept both those teams back to back. Certainly not the Blazer ball club with all that talent. And then you throw Shaq against them, and they're trouble handling bigs. I don't think that's something that they could have done either. It's a fun argument. You could talk about it at length. It's just too bad that the matchup never took place.
Prediction time, Sean. Who wins that series and in how many games?
Well, I'm not gonna bet against my guys. I'm never gonna do that. Even when I talk to Timmy Duncan nowadays, we'll still talk about that season, and he's still upset that we lost that one game in New York. Even though he won the championship. So I'm not going to go against a guy that has that kind of competitiveness and that kind of fire. And I'm not going to go against my boy Big Dave and the little General Avery Johnson and Mario Elliott, who brought all the intensity. And I just think that was a different group, Hector. And I like our chances. I say we're going to win that in 6. We would have wrapped it up here.
Here.
Great, yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, depending on who had home court advantage,
right.
But I like our chances. I'm going to say that the Bulls, after winning 3 in a row, they're a little tired, they're a little weary. They spend the lockout celebrating. A couple guys come back fat and happy, and they don't have such a good regular season. And so I'm going to say we have home court advantage. We win it in 6 on our court.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. And one more thing about the 99 team that I think gets lost and forgotten, especially as we move further away from it, is how good that team was down the stretch in terms of closing out games. Like we all know about the sweeps against the Lakers and the Blazers, right? And I just mentioned the 12 playoff wins in a row. But you guys, I remember that team vividly because of how good you guys were at executing down the stretch offensively and then defensively, essentially defying teams to score and just locking them down. I remember the regular season, even before the wonderful postseason run started, regular season, you guys had 2 close games against Portland and a game against Utah here at the
That's
Dome.
right. That's
All
right.
3 of those games went down to the wire against the other 2 best teams in the West. You
That's right.
won all 3 of those games. And then once you get into the playoffs, the closeout game in Minnesota, close game, you win it. Game 2 against the Lakers here, the infamous Kobe misses free throws. And Tim gets the late shot. You guys win it there. The Portland game before your Memorial Day miracle, everybody forgets that game 1 in that Portland series, Rasheed had a late shot to try to tie it, missed it. You guys win that close game. There's obviously the Memorial Day miracle, and then the finals, game 4. That was a close game there in New York to set up the title clincher in game 5. So yes, there were sweeps and there were blowouts along the way, but every time you guys had a close game from the last week of the regular season on, you guys were money.
Yeah, and you know, Hector, we knew how to win games. We had a lot of years previously where we had the best record in the league. So we knew how to close out games. But for some reason, for previous years, we never translated that to the playoffs. Something always tripped us up. But that team brought it all together. And like you said, we knew how to close out games. And let's not forget, you know, when you talked about the Memorial Day miracle, that shot went down with about 9 seconds to play. We still had to get a stop. We only led by 1, so we still had to rely on our defense to win the ball game. It wasn't a buzzer beater. And so we did whatever we had to do down the stretch. We executed. And I talk about on the telecast all the time. When you talk about getting stops down the stretch, that's trust in each other on the defensive end of the floor. That's something you build the first day of training camp, and we all trusted each other. We trusted in the game plan. We trusted in the guy next to us or behind us. And so defensively, we were solid, especially down the stretch.